and pull out responding, then we'll be able to as well ask really well, uh, can give us maybe a brief of your look into the chat. Yeah, just tell us more about yourself, sir.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? If everyone can hear me, I'll just like a thumbs up or some
Yes,
sort of a reaction.
I can hear you, sir.
Excellent. Now, unfortunately, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Okay. So we just wanted a brief introduction, about yourself, your brand, maybe a little bit of how it started.
All right, great. Got it. Got it. I think I'll start by saying thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And it is true that I've known you for,
What?
can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
All right, great, 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 great. So, thank you so much for the kind introduction. It is true that I've known you for over 10 years, and when you say it, it sounds longer. But I'll get right into the business. I started my business back in 2017, and I started it when I was still at UNZA, when I was in my first year. But my love for shoes actually started a lot earlier than that. It started, in fact, when I was still very young, because I remember my siblings and my parents telling me stories about how I loved shoes so much that I would sleep in them. And so my love for shoes has always been there. I've had this keen eye for shoes. So EveryMan store provides quality footwear to men across Zambia. Now, the reason why I decided to venture into shoes was mainly for three reasons. The first one is something that all of us go through, is that uh, we all want to make money. Now, for me in first year, I was very broke and it was painful, because it was either I go back to my parents and ask for money or I start a business. And the older I got, it was harder and harder to ask my parents for money. So I thought instead of asking them for money constantly, I might as well start a business. And the reason why I ventured into shoes was it's because I noticed a gap in the market in the sense that every time you go out looking for shoes, there was a limited offering, especially that time. I mean, this was in 2017, and there wasn't much access to, can I say, there weren't many online stores where you could purchase shoes. You had a limited place to choose from. Either you're going to walk into Bata or you go to the mall or you go into town. But there wasn't any online store that was offering shoes. And so I noticed that and I decided to, fill in that gap and to start selling shoes. So the first pair of shoes that I sold was to a friend of mine. And for me, I thought that selling the shoe to him was just because, he was a friend of mine. But when I saw him wearing the shoes and when I saw the joy that he had from having the shoes, I then realized I had something there. And this is one of the things that has kept me going because every time I sell a pair of shoes, people usually give good reviews. And many people who, when I see them in public and I tell them that I was actually the person who sold you this shoe, there's so much joy that they have from having the shoe. And I think that's what spurred me on. So that's a brief background behind EveryMan store and why I ventured into shoes. And the reason why it's still open now, it's because of the joy that we're providing to our customers. And that's actually something that's kept me motivated. So that's a brief background of why I started the business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. I did take note that this started back in 2017, and this was your first year in university, just as a way to make some money, and eventually the reviews that people were giving started motivating you more and giving you the what can I say, the drive to push you towards making this into what it is today. So now your business has been there for about, we're saying, 8 years now. What are some of the what has been some of the most challenging times of running your business? Are you doing your business full time, or are you doing it alongside with your career? I know that you're in the legal fraternity. Do you do it at the same time, or do you do your business full time? How has it been managing both sides, the professional side as a career, and also the entrepreneurship side as you make your sales for the shoes?
All right, great. So, well, at the moment, I I still have a job. Let me call it my 9 to 5. I'm still balancing both work and the business. And perhaps that's one of the biggest challenges I face usually, because the way I've approached it is, and maybe this is something that you guys touched on last week, is that you we all need to be able to create multiple sources of income. And that's something that for me that I have understood for a long time. And that's the reason why I decided to have a 9 to 5 while I'm pursuing the business. But what I try to do in terms of striking a balance is that I dedicate certain time towards my business. Typically, that's after working hours because usually I'm working between 8 and 17 hours. But then after 17, I always try to dedicate about 3 hours of my time towards my business. And I think that's what's helped me striking that balance. Now, it hasn't always been easy because there are demands from work, but that's the beauty about having these platforms like, we've now got social media. And depending on how you use it, it can actually be a competitive advantage because the beauty about having an online business and posting things on social media, it means that you can actually dedicate the time within which you will respond to your customers. And obviously, if you have an agent, let's say you have a customer wants you to make a delivery, that's during the day. So all you need to do is have someone who can handle the deliveries for you. And then you can then focus on how you're marketing, branding, how your page looks in the evening. And that's what I've done. And that's been how I've continued to run for these past 8 years, balancing both work and the business. And this has only been possible because much of the interactions that I'm having are through WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. And those things there are platforms which you can control how much time you spend on them. Yeah, so that's how I balance both of those. In terms of the biggest challenge that I've faced with the business is perhaps I hope I can tell it briefly, but in my second year of business, this was around 2019, I had been saving up money and I decided, okay, let me invest this money into a company. And for me, I wanted to invest that money so that, I could increase it and perhaps purchase more stock and then grow the business and scale from there. Now, I took out all my savings, invested them in this company, and unfortunately, the company that I invested in went bankrupt. And that means that the company was no longer existing. Or what can I say? The company had to close down and it had more debts than it had assets, and the creditors of that company had to be paid off. So, in essence, I lost all the money that I had been saving. Now, at this point in At this point in my business, being very, it was just starting, I literally had to stop everything. And now it was a question of, am I going to continue the business or am I going to stop? And perhaps this was the lowest point in my business, but I said, okay, fine. Looking at where I was coming from just a year ago, I started from literally with nothing. So it forced me and it reminded me of why I started the business. And I told myself, I can't stop now. And I had to continue going. And perhaps that was the biggest challenge I ever faced. That was 2019 when I lost all my money in a careless investment and I had to start again from scratch. That was perhaps the hardest or the most challenging period in my business journey. Thanks.
All right, thank you. That's quite insightful as well. And you did mention that I picked up the thing that you dedicate time as a way to balance between work and business. You dedicate about 3 hours, maybe after work, maybe at 17, to social media, or find your adverts, your customers
Sorry, John, I'm
need
really
and
having a hard time hearing you. I can't hear anything you're saying.
yeah, it's hard because you are fairly. You kidding me? Hi, hi.
Sorry,
Can you
I
hear
didn't
me
hear
now?
you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think we can hear you now. You can repeat your question.
Okay, I was saying, as a student, how were you managing the school life and business? Because I know we have some students who are listening. Do they should were you taking the same approach, like during the days for school, then the night is for business? And how were you doing it? Because social media advertising wasn't so big back in 2017, coming forward this side.
Yeah, that's actually very true. I mean, in fact, the approach in university was kind of like flipped because, the evening was time I would dedicate to study. So, I guess I was fortunate in the sense that at UNZA, if you're pursuing law, your class is at 12. So I would use the time after 12, between 12 and 17 to focus on the business. And in fact, I think the in fact back then it was even more challenging because there wasn't even many Yango delivery services, right? So it meant I would have to go personally and deliver the products. And it was an interesting time. It was fun and a bit what can I say? It was you never know which customer you're going to meet. In fact, in those days, I remember going into town with like four pairs of shoes because customers weren't sure of what they wanted. Some customers they wanted to see the shoe they didn't trust. They didn't trust me. The shoe the business was still new. So I remember walking into town with four pairs of shoes. I'll put them in a bag, put them in my back, and then you meet a customer. You never know what you're going to get. But it was exciting. I I do know that at least something that I've come to appreciate is that with business, it's about deciding your pain. And by that I mean it's not easy to be an entrepreneur, but you have to decide whether what you're doing is worth it. And for me at that time, when I had started my business, I thought that I was providing value to people. And every time I would go with a pair of shoes, in my mind, I had a good product. And I knew that if anybody was to see my shoe, 9 times out of 10, they would buy. So I guess what I'm saying is if you have trust in your product and if you know you're giving a good product, despite how hard it is, you might just have to go through it, persevere, and push through those hard times. So in school, like mainly it was in the afternoon between 12 and 17. I would make deliveries myself, meet people, take phone calls. And then when I get back to where I was staying after 17, then I would, focus on school. So again, it was about striking a balance. But the point of all of this is that you decide you choose your pain, you just choose that what you're doing is worth it, and you just push through. So that's how I made it through balancing both university and the business at the same time. Thanks.
I then came to visit you guys. I think you're still in school by then, and I found the shoes in your room. Like you were the one who was managing the. Have it
Sorry
one, and
to
how did you keep
interrupt.
them?
I think we're having a hard time listening to Mr. John. I don't know if it's his network connection or something. I don't know.
Like I
It is true, John. We're having a hard time hearing you. So I don't know if you can connect with something stronger or post the questions in the group. I don't know. All right. So I've seen the question in the group. Thank you. So the question is, how did I assemble my team and how do I motivate? How do I keep them motivated? Well, when choosing people to work with, one of the fundamentals is that you have to find people who are hardworking, people who are smart, and people who have integrity. Now, it's not easy to find people with all three. And so I would recommend whenever you're setting up a team or whenever you're deciding to do something with anyone, it doesn't even have to be people who you're venturing into a financial venture with. You have to make sure they have integrity. So I have had multiple partnerships in my business, and most of them have been people who've helped me with, things like sourcing the products, um, things like selling the products in terms of people who deliver the goods. And for many of these people, it's been people with good integrity. Now, whenever you meet anyone, and perhaps it's different for different people, but you can always get a sense of the kind of person you're meeting in the first encounter. Most people would say it's good vibes or different impressions of the people, but that matters. And for me, I take that into account. So every time I meet someone, you can be able to tell the kind of person you're interacting with. And it's been important for me that whoever I decide to partner with is a person of high integrity. So right now we have mainly, at least for the business, I could say there's four main employees I work with. And all of these people are people who I can trust. And this to me is even more important than how intelligent or how smart they are. The fact that I can trust them. And also these people are hardworking in the sense that I've been working with these people since I think since 2021. And that's what you should look for whenever you're deciding to venture in any project with. Just ensure that the person has integrity. And then you get a sense of the kind of person they are. You have to have matching values. Are they Christian? Um, what are they doing? What are they getting into business with you for? So once you understand those things, it helps. In terms of keeping people motivated, at least the only, I think, aside from paying them, of course, what has kept these people motivated, at least from the time I've known them, is how at least I have mutual respect for them. And that's very important, especially when you're dealing with things like this. In a business, much of my business, more than selling a good product, is about the experience that customers have. And the customer experience isn't just about the shoe, it's about the person who's finally going to sell the shoe to them. And it's important that those people, once they interact with my customers, they treat them well. And how I treat them will translate into how they treat my customers. So what I'm saying is, in terms of motivating them, I have had to lead by example in terms of how I treat my customers and how I treat the people who are working for me. And I think that's what keeps them motivated, because they know that when we have, let's say, there are months in which we have many orders and there's many interactions back and forth, they know that I will not disappear. I will not just switch off my phone. They know I'll be there, and we'll get through those busy periods together. So I think that's what keeps them motivated, and that's leading by example. As opposed to just barking orders to people, sometimes be there in the heat of the moment. And I think that's what's kept my team motivated. So those are the two. Before I hire anybody or before I decide to venture in anything with anybody, I ensure that they have integrity. In terms of keeping them motivated, I lead by example, and I'm there with them during the thick the of the seasons, or whenever things are tough. We're together, we're doing things together. Thank you.
So I think Mr. Jones' internet is not strong. It's failing to connect him properly, and there's some questions I've been given to ask. So I'll ask the following question on his behalf. So the other question is, what is your approach to pricing, and how did you decide on those prices?
All right, thank you. Ipiana, have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yes, that's pronounced correctly. Ipiana.
Oh, that's
Oh,
good.
sorry, I didn't
All right,
introduce
got it.
myself. Yes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. In terms of pricing, okay. In any business, you have to, once you venture into a business, it's not for free. People don't venture into businesses just for the sake of, you know, giving things away for free. That should never be the reason why you start business. If you can't price your goods correctly, then don't even venture into business. I live by the philosophy is, you buy something for 1 kwacha, you sell it for 2 kwacha. You buy something for 5 kwacha, you sell it for 10 kwacha. That's not to say that once you're selling a product, you have to sell it for 50% profit. No, it just means that for you to stay open in business, you have to sell your product at a profit. Now, you have to be interested in pricing, because pricing is what will determine how long you stay in business. The truth is, if I don't price my goods at a profit, it would mean eventually we would have to shut down because we do not have enough to grow. The philosophy I use when pricing my goods is as follows. You take into account how much the product cost you, then you put a percentage of profit above, then you go to market. I've seen some businesses who don't state the price. They decided to keep it to themselves and then wait for people to ask them what the price is. That's the wrong approach to business, because you're wasting time on getting a sale when people are asking you for the price. The better approach is you state your price and then let the person negotiate up or down. And in Zambia, one thing I've realized is people like discounts, right? Most people won't accept the price as it is. So it'd be wise for you, instead of them asking you what's the price, state the price. let them negotiate with you. Now, like I said, you start with how much the goods cost you. You put a margin. By that, I mean you put a percentage on top of it, take it to market, and see how the market reacts. So for me, I believe a good margin of profit is between 30% and 35%. So if you do mathematics, if you get your phone nowadays, you've got calculators, just calculate the cost of your goods, whatever it is you're selling, and then just say plus 30%, and that's your price. Now, sometimes you can set the price of your goods and your customers do not accept the price in that they are not buying from you. What do you do? Because it's your business, don't be stuck at that price. You can always change the price. So my philosophy has always been, I determine how much my goods cost. I put a percentage of profit. I take it to market. I see the interaction. I see how people are reacting to the price. Because the mistake you want to make is to price your goods too high, in the sense that it scares customers away. Worse is if you set it too low, and now everybody's buying, and you're just breaking even. So that's been my philosophy to pricing. Thanks.
Um, Thank you. So, last question. The last question is, what advice would you give to someone just starting the entrepreneur journey?
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what advice would I give to someone starting their journey? Well, the first thing I would say is you have to understand the reason why you are getting into business. Now, the reason why I say this is the reason why you start your business is what's going to fuel you throughout the years. Because, like I said, I think one of the things I said about business is that it's hard. It's a painful process. So if you don't have a strong foundation of why you're starting your business, it means you crumble. You give up as things get tough. I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2020, there was a huge boom of online businesses. You know, most people were at home during COVID-19. They didn't have anything to do. They decided to start businesses. Many people started businesses, but it just took them about a year or two and they stopped their businesses. So the first thing I would say to anyone is you have to understand why you want to venture into business. And once you've understood that, then you execute. Many people will have great ideas. They will have different plans of how they're going to make money, but they don't act on those plans. I am of the opinion, at least my philosophy is, an executed plan is better than a perfect plan not executed. I'll say that again. An executed plan, a plan that's been put in action, is better than a plan that's just perfect, but it stays in your mind. So I would say you start with the reason why you're venturing into business, then you take action and you keep going because it's going to be a painful journey, but you keep going. I think one thing that would distinguish you from other people is that if you're constantly there. And one thing I've realized is that in the first few years of my business, I had many reasons to stop because there were months, there were weeks where you have no one inquiring into your product. And those moments are very demoralizing. But the longer I've stayed and the longer I've had like this huge runway and people have got like a reference point whereby they're like, oh, okay, we've seen this business, it's been open for this long. This isn't just a scam. It's then easier to convince them and persuade them to buy. So much as you have a good product in business, sometimes it's the fact that you've been around for so long that will help you. So you start with why, then you make a plan, but more than just making a plan, you need to take action and you don't stop. I think that's what I'll tell anybody venturing into business because the point at which we are at, if we're just looking at Zambia as a country, the Zambia is different from many other African countries in the sense that we have a growing population, and that really helps us. you can compare Zambia to, let's say, Namibia or Botswana. The challenge with these two countries is they're smaller in terms of their size of population. So, quite right, they might be very wealthy, but the population is small. The beauty about Zambia is it's got a large population, and that means a large population, educated population. That means that trade is happening fast. And it means that there's many opportunities for people out there, which if you just find a good product, you price it right, you can take advantage of the stage that we're in. So I would tell any entrepreneur to just get started. And once you do start, don't stop. That's the advice I would give to an entrepreneur starting their journey right now. Thank you.
Um, Thank you very much, sir. I'll just ask anyone else if they've got any questions they would like to ask from you. So I'm leaving the floor open to any questions directed to I forgot. Is it Fola? Fola?
That's very funny. Nobody ever gets my name right. It's okay. It's Paula.
Paula. Paula. Am I back now?
Yes, we
Yes, you're
can hear
back.
you, sir.
Uh, Sorry, guys. My internet has been very bad, but thank you, Ipiana, for stepping in. Yeah. Any questions on the flow that Mr. Paula can answer right now? Or Paula, is there any question that you saw in the registration from the forms that you'd like to answer for us?
Well, there was one question that I saw, and it was about how do you scale your business? And so somebody was asking, how do you scale your business? Now, it made me think about this question, how to scale a business. And one thing I understand about business is if you have a great product, that is, let's say you could have, I can give the example of the shoes. You have to have really, really good shoes, right? Like my shoes, if they're not good, customers will not return. So you start with a great product and then you grow from there. I could give another example. Let's say you are in the business of maybe hotels or lodges or Airbnb or something of that nature. You have to start by first making the experience great and then you grow from there. I believe that, I think there should be a proverb that says, he who can handle small amounts or small resources will be better able to handle larger resources. So before you can scale, you start with what you have. That's the product or service you're giving. You make it as good and as excellent as you can, and then you grow from there. So the example I gave of a hotel, the hotel is offering services of maybe lodging, accommodation, and food. Before they can scale that business or grow it further, they first have to provide an excellent product. After they provide that excellent product, then they focus on getting the word out there because it makes no sense if you have a good product but you're not telling people about it. And that's where marketing and advertising comes in. We're fortunate that we're living in a time when we have Facebook, we have Google ads, we have newspapers, we have radio if you want. There's many places in which you can advertise your product. You just have to be strategic about it. So the second thing would be you market your product. You put it out there, you put it in the face of people. Because the reality is if you don't put it out there, no one will buy it. So you start with a good product, you market it well, and then you price it fairly. I say price it fairly because sometimes you're tempted to be too excited about the price, whereby you set it too high because maybe there's an increased demand. But if you're trying to grow a business, sometimes it will help you to put it at even just slightly cheaper than the market, so you attract more people. And instead of you competing on price, you're competing now on how many people are entering your, if it's a hotel, the hotel example I was giving, how many people are coming into your store. And you continue to grow your base like that. Now, the final thing, at least with scaling your business, is you need to have the resources for it, the capital. Now, either you're going to get a loan for it, or you're going to reinvest the money that you've earned from the business. And I would recommend that people do the latter. The money that you've earned from the business, you invest it back into the business. I think that's the best way to grow a business. You earn money, you put it back in the business, as opposed to getting a loan and then, scaling the business. And the reason why I'm saying it's better to use the money generated from the business, you have a good core, a good foundation, and from there you can grow. And then the final thing would, in terms of scaling your business, is you have to constantly be innovating and changing, because you need to have like what can I call? You need to have a competitive advantage over your competitors. It's a competition. Business is about competing between you and the next person. And one way to stay above or to stay ahead of the curve is to continue, improving on your product, innovating and changing. And those are the ways in which you can scale a business. You start with a good product, you market it well, price it fairly, you constantly innovating, and don't what can I say? Don't be comfortable with just the bare minimum. You have to go the extra mile. And that would be my advice on how to scale a business. That was one question that stood out for me. Thanks.
All right, thanks. I've posted one in the chat. It says, do you plan to go full time in business, or you plan to continue to run both career and business?
That's a good question. That's a hard question. In fact, that's a hard question, because if I say no, then am I really as passionate about my business as I'm saying I am? But that's a good question. Well, honestly, I at least for the next year or two, I see myself doing both my business and my career. And it is only at a point at which I feel like I cannot handle the stresses of both my business and work, at which I would then have to choose one. At this point, I think I'll continue to manage my business and work. And the reason for this is something which I think everyone has to realize. I think if you want to attain financial independence, if you want to be wealthy, you need to create multiple sources of income. And there's no two ways about it. You need to create multiple sources of income. I'm not saying everyone should start a business, but everybody should consider ways in which they can create multiple sources of income. So we're fortunate that all of us have been given God-given talents. And the beauty about talents is, at least in the world that we're living in, you can monetize your talents. Either you're a good singer, you could start singing and then gain some traction from that. If you're an artist, you could start drawing and maybe sell your products. If maybe you've got an eye for good things, you could then start planning events. But I believe everybody's got a God-given talent, and the moment you figure out a way to live through that talent, it becomes it becomes it becomes easy for you to pursue that thing. So I see myself managing, or at least continuing in my career and my business until the point at which it becomes unmanageable. Then I think I will have to decide which one. At this point, I'm not sure which one I would choose. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks. Another one just came in. This one I got it from an outsider, not in the call, but just someone who asked me when they saw the poster. They were asking, what are the pros and cons of the online and the physical store? So I know you have the store and I know you have the online presence. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of both?
All right. Okay, no, that's a good question, and that's actually something that I think about all the time. Well, it's okay. I'll say this. An online store is cheaper. It is much, much cheaper. The physical store, more expensive in the sense that you've got rent, you've got council fees, you've got employees, you've got water bills, utility bills, maintenance. So a physical store is like 50 times more expensive. But, and this is one thing that if the person is deciding whether to open up a physical store or an online store, people like to feel the product before they purchase. And unfortunately, we're living in a time where not everyone is online. At least not everyone who can spend money is online. And that's the reason why the physical store becomes important. There are many customers I've had who saw the shoes in the physical store, they walked in and purchased, and then they referred it to their friends. So I'm thinking about people who are in their 50s. These guys have got money. So if you're purely online, you're going to miss out on these people. Now, the beauty about online stores is, like I said, there's not much spending on rent. But more than that, you can actually grow with your audience. So there are many people who 8 years ago couldn't purchase shoes from me, but 8 years later, they're now working and they can afford. And that's the beauty about the online store. If you continue to grow with your audience and you continue to stay relevant, it would mean that at the point at which these people can afford money, they will purchase from you. Now, and the final thing I would say with regards to deciding whether you get an online store or physical store, sometimes it depends on what you're selling. So if you position yourself as a luxury good where your price is really high, it might not be the wisest thing to be purely online because then people will not trust because it's easier for people to part with a large sum of money in a physical store than it is online. And for me, that was maybe the biggest con, the biggest challenge I faced, convincing people to part with their money, especially in the beginning. Most transactions couldn't happen purely online because people would be like, no, I can't trust you to send you all of this money. So it helps that you have a physical store. You tell them, no, go to the store, you do the transaction there if you don't trust me. But a way around that is just make sure that you are what can I say? Whenever you sell something online, provide a receipt that helps. So those are the two. In terms of which one is better, it's difficult to say, but I would say this: if your business has grown to over 1,000 purchases, I would say you can open a physical store because at that point, it means even without a physical presence, you've been able to sell 1,000 shoes or 1,000, I don't know, you've had 1,000 people purchase from you online, whatever service it is, I would say you're ready to open a physical store, provided you are prepared to pay for the rentals, pay for the council fees, pay your employees, pay NAPSA, pay NEMA, pay ZRA, then you might as well start. But it's definitely something you have to think about carefully before you do. It's not just something you get into willy-nilly. Thanks.
Thank you, Paula. That question was actually from my wife when she saw this program. So she wanted to know because I know she's stalked your store before. So she wanted to know whether you have a physical store as well. And maybe as we conclude, because I know we've spent quite some time here, just give us where we can find you. Where should we find your physical store? And I know I'll share the links for the online store in the group, but just tell us where we can find you and yeah, just wrap up the meeting for us. We've learned so much. Apologies again for the bad internet, but yeah, it's something that I'm still working on. But thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming through. And thank you so much, John, for allowing me to speak to the audience here and share the little knowledge that I have. It's been fun. In terms of where to find me, we are on Facebook, EveryMan Store. We are on Instagram, EveryMan Store as well. And we also on WhatsApp as well, EveryMan Store. In terms of a physical store, we are at Leonica Mall, Cora. It's the shop right opposite Capello. If you walk in there, you find EveryMan store shoes. You find three lovely ladies to help you, Vanessa, Nandi, and Chanda. And if they don't give you a good service, let me know. And I promise you I'll get back to you personally. So yeah, that's where you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. Always 24/7. I'll be able to respond to you. And if you want to see what we have, you can just get to Leonicamo in Woodlands, Cora. You get in there, you see the Everyman store shoes. That's where you can find me. And I must say thank you so much for the insightful questions. And I hope I have been of assistance to any entrepreneur seeking to start or who's anybody who's wondering whether or not to venture into business or just to pursue their career. I think one of the core things that you should understand is you start with why. If you understand the reason why you're doing it, then it becomes easier. And so I think in parting, I would recommend three books for anybody who's interested to read. The first one would be Start With Why by Simon Sinek. This is a good book for understanding your purpose. It will really help you. The second book will be Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It will help you with investments and how to think differently because a lot about business is the mindset you have towards business. And the last book would be The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that one will help you with balancing whatever it is you're doing. If you're still in school, it will help you balance school. If you're in business, it will help you balance your business and your personal life. If you're in a career, it will help you balance your career. And I think with those many words, I would say thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me to speak to everyone.
Thank you, Ola. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today. We'll keep updated on the group. I'll share the recording. I'll also share the online store links so that we could visit the page and see what's in store that we could possibly buy and also learn from as a way of growing our business. Thank you so much, guys. Have